In the dust of a forgotten outpost, a young combat medic risked everything to drag wounded soldiers to cover. But when the sniper kept firing and no one else could make the shot, she picked up a rifle meant for someone else and pulled the trigger. That day, she saved a SEAL unit with a single impossible shot. What they didn't know was that she once swore never to shoot again. What she didn't know? That shot would make her a legend and change military history forever. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? She didn't remember crawling toward the rocks, only the blood and the silence between gunshots. Dust clung to her lips, and the cries of two wounded Marines behind her split the air like jagged glass. Every instinct she had was pulling her backward, to tend, to heal, to stop the bleeding, to find a vein. But something else had shifted. Something deeper than muscle memory, deeper than training. The evacuation bird had circled twice and pulled away, unable to land under fire. The sniper hadn't missed. He had patience, range, and a kill zone that dared anyone to move. 3 medics had already tried. 2 were dead. 1 was still breathing, barely. And in that moment, she understood with gut-level clarity that if she stayed the medic, more men would die. It was a crossroads no one prepares for. Stay a healer and watch them bleed, or become something she had never planned to be. She slid the scope from the downed marksman's kit beside her, heart pounding in her throat, hands trembling not from fear but from resistance, because this was not who she was, not what she signed up to be. But war doesn't wait for clean labels. She adjusted the optic with blood-slick fingers, found the glint of glass where the enemy's scope had just blinked sunlight, and felt the world shrink to breath, trigger, silence. There were no words in her head, no prayers, no rage. Just the shape of duty shifting. And when the shot broke, it wasn't perfect. It was necessary. One impossible choice, one impossible shot, and everything changed. She never imagined she'd hold a rifle again. Not after leaving the quiet hills of her hometown, where Saturdays were for cleaning wounds at the animal shelter and Sundays were spent side by side with her father at the local range. He was a former Marine, soft-spoken, with hands that taught her both how to aim and how to mend a broken wing. When she was 13, she could split a clay pigeon at 100 yards. But she never bragged. That wasn't her way. Medicine had called her early. Something about fixing what was broken, not destroying it. So when she signed up, it wasn't to fight, but to heal. Her fingers, so steady with suture thread, became second nature with 4 lines under pressure. Her breath, always calm even when the world spun. Her mind, trained to stay sharp while others panicked. These were the tools she believed would define her path. Precision born from compassion, nerves of steel guided by empathy. But what she didn't realize then was that those quiet days at the range weren't just bonding moments. They were etching something permanent into her muscle and mind. A discipline, a readiness, a dormant skill waiting in the background, not forgotten, just unused. Until now, the rifle wasn't hers. It had belonged to Corporal Vance, now motionless under a torp of shattered stone, his hands still clutching the bipod. She crawled toward it like a surgeon approaching a fallen scalpel, not because she wanted to use it, but because no one else was left to. The radio crackled again, another plea from command asking if anyone could neutralize the shooter. Her hands moved without asking permission. She'd never held a TAC-50 in combat, never adjusted for wind over that kind of range, never factored in heat shimmer off the canyon floor. But her father had taught her to shoot with both eyes open, and medicine had taught her how to steady her breath before slicing into flesh. She flattened against the ground, slowed her breathing to a surgeon's pace, adjusted elevation with fingers that once tied off arteries, and found the enemy's glint through the scope. 200 meters past standard range. Slight right wind. No margin for error. No second chance. The screaming behind her faded into a tunnel of focus. She pressed the trigger with the same touch she'd used to close a chest wound. 1 breath in, 1 exhale. The shot cracked like bone in silence. And then, stillness. Radio silence broke a heartbeat later, target down. The evac bird circled back in. Men shouted. One whispered, "What the hell just happened?" Word spread fast. about the medic who made the impossible shot. Not a sniper, not trained, just calm, precise, and devastatingly effective. That shot saved every man there. When the report hit command, it sounded like a mistake. A field medic, not listed on any sniper roster, had executed a confirmed kill at an absurd range under chaotic conditions. The SEAL commander reviewing the incident scrolled through the footage twice, then asked a single question: who the hell is she? Orders came fast. She was pulled from her post 2 days later, flown to a base without warning, and told to wait. No explanation, no charges, just silence and the weight of uncertainty. She assumed it was disciplinary, maybe even a court-martial. But when the door opened, it wasn't an officer with stripes and paperwork. It was a SEAL in desert gear with arms folded and a single nod. They didn't speak much, just handed her a med kit and pointed to a dummy half torn open by simulated shrapnel. She stabilized it fast, too fast, maybe. Then they walked her to a range. No warm-up, just targets at impossible distances. Wind, movement, low light. She hit everyone. Questions stopped. Observing operators exchanged glances, then called in the commander. He just watched, then finally asked, "You do that under fire, too?" She didn't blink. "Yes, sir." He nodded once. That was it. No fanfare. No speech. But the shift had begun. She wasn't just a medic anymore. She was something else. Something they weren't used to seeing. And they hadn't even told her the mission yet. It was supposed to be a standard extraction, swift and silent. Retrieve the hostages, out before sunrise. But deep in hostile territory, standard unraveled fast. The SEALs move in tight formation, the medic embedded but quiet, focused, watching. 3 civilians were held inside a half-collapsed stone compound flanked by armed insurgents. When the breach went sideways and gunfire erupted, all plans dissolved. One SEAL took a round to the leg and dropped hard, bleeding fast and groaning through gritted teeth. The hostages screamed. The team was pinned behind cover with no clean exit. She didn't flinch. While others fired suppressing rounds, she grabbed the long rifle slung tight to her back, a backup she hadn't used since training, and sighted the rooftops. 2 targets with RPGs crouched along the northern ridge. In under 5 seconds, both were down. A third, hidden, raised his head near the well. She dropped him mid-turn. No one had ordered her. No one needed to. Then she sprinted, low and fast, past the burning ATV, her body a blur of medical gear and grit, weaving through debris under enemy fire. She slid into the wounded SEAL's side like she'd rehearsed it 100 times, applying pressure, sealing the wound, calming his rising panic with firm hands and steadier eyes. When the evac point was reached, she was last to climb aboard, blooded, silent, rifle across her chest. The hostages were safe. The SEAL was alive. And the team, hardened, elite, tested, sat stunned, watching her in quiet awe. They would talk about that mission for years, not just for the risks or the outcome, but for the medic who moved like a ghost between life and death, between healing and precision, with no hesitation and no need for recognition. The bird was already lifting when one of the SEALs shouted, "Sniper, Ridge." And every instinct screamed to duck, but she didn't. She dropped to prone beside the ramp, yanked the scope into place, and scanned the jagged terrain 1,000 meters out. There, half-shadowed, a marksman was setting up on an outcropping just above the old mine wall. Too far for most. Wind was erratic, distance brutal. The target had high ground, full view of their exit path, and maybe 10 seconds before he fired. But she didn't measure it like a sniper. She measured it like a medic. She didn't just see a body. She saw a rib cage, the arc of bone, the edge of the scapula, the pulse of the neck, the gap between armor plates where life pulsed loudest. Anatomy was her blueprint, and ballistics became an extension of that knowledge. She inhaled slow, the butt of the rifle firm against her shoulder. One breath, one press. The shot cracked like a warning from God. The figure on the ridge dropped instantly, limp before the echo faded. No second shot needed. Just one impossibly precise round at the edge of possibility. When she climbed back onto the bird, none of the seals said a word. But one of them looked over, shook his head, and muttered, "She's not one of us. She's something else." From that day, the story grew. Not exaggerated, just repeated, with reverence. The medic who made the shot no one could believe. The one who didn't blink. She didn't ask for anything after the mission. Not a medal, not a title, not even a mention in the debrief. But what she had done couldn't be ignored. The SEAL leadership convened quietly, reviewing the footage, the outcomes, the reports filed by hardened men who rarely gave praise. What they saw wasn't just a skilled operator. It was something new. Someone who could cross the line between healing and eliminating threats without hesitation or loss of clarity. And so, they asked her to help build what had never existed before, a new kind of warrior. A dual-role operator trained not just to stabilize wounds under fire, but to prevent them with unmatched precision. She became the prototype, leading drills, advising doctrine, shaping the curriculum for a role no one had dared imagine. It wasn't about replacing snipers or medics, but bridging a gap most thought uncrossable. Her story became legend not because of medals or missions, but because she quietly redrew the map of what was possible on the battlefield. Years later, when rookies are told about the medic who saved lives with a rifle and changed the rules without ever asking permission, they just nod. Everyone knows the name. Everyone knows the story. And they still talk about that shot, the one that proved compassion and lethality could live in the same hands. She never wanted to be remembered for the shot, not for the distance, the speed, or even the silence that followed. What mattered to her was that no one else died that day, that the bleeding stopped, that families didn't get phone calls. She never set out to carry a rifle into battle, only bandages, pressure dressings, and the steady calm that keeps men alive. But sometimes the world doesn't wait for the right job title. Sometimes the person with the heart to heal also has the hands steady enough to stop the killing before it starts. And in that moment, lying in dust with lives hanging by seconds, she didn't ask who she was. She simply became what the moment needed. That's what the SEALs saw. Not just a medic, not just a shooter, but someone willing to make the choice no one else could. Would you? If it meant saving lives. If it meant crossing that invisible line between protector and warrior? Her answer was yes. And that's why they still talk about her. Quietly. With respect. Because heroes don't always come from where you expect. But when they do, the battlefield remembers.